I was only halfway down the aisle toward the university platform when a sharp scraping sound fractured the air behind me. At first, I thought someone had dropped something, but then I heard her voice steady, cold, and loud enough to halt an entire auditorium. Serena Vale, my older sister, stood from her seat as if she had been rehearsing that exact moment for months. "She doesn't deserve to graduate," she shouted, pointing at me like she was delivering a public sentence. Her tone carried no hesitation, no tremor, only dark satisfaction. Hundreds of faces turned toward her, then to me. Their expressions shifted from confusion to shock, and I could feel the weight of every stare pressing into my skin. I forced myself to keep walking toward the stage, my heartbeat loud but my steps controlled. I had survived 4 years of grinding work, late-night projects, and a series of strange misfortunes that had nearly pushed me off track. And now, on the one day meant to mark the end of that struggle, Serena chose to break the dam. Before I reveal what I did next, I need you to understand something. Serena wasn't always my enemy. She was once the person whose approval I craved the most. The girl I followed around like sunlight. The sister I believed would always catch me if I stumbled. Serena had been the star in every room we ever walked into. Even in childhood, she had a magnetic charm, effortless, glowing, irresistible. At family dinners in our town of Alden Ridge, relatives leaned toward her stories as if she were telling fairy tales. I used to sit beside her, nodding, careful not to interrupt her spotlight. For years, I convinced myself that she shined so brightly, there was no harm in letting her have the world while I tucked myself quietly into its corners. But something changed when my life finally began to take shape in ways hers didn't. By the time I reached my junior year of high school, my grades surpassed hers. Teachers began praising my essays, my research, my test scores. Even my quietness shifted into something like confidence. Serena's smile, once warm, turned brittle around the edges. The night my scholarship letter arrived, she congratulated me, but her eyes held a sharpness I'd never seen before. College only widened the gap. I left home with a stack of psychology books, and a stubborn hope that the world beyond Alden Ridge would finally be mine to explore. Serena stayed behind after dropping out of her graduate program. I didn't think much of it then. Life paths aren't supposed to be identical. I believed she would find her footing again. I didn't realize she had already begun anchoring her frustrations to my progress. The sabotage didn't come all at once. It arrived slowly, quietly, like a dripping faucet you ignore because you tell yourself it's nothing serious. A month into my first semester, my scholarship reimbursement came in short. I thought it was a clerical mistake, something the financial aid office would fix with one email. They didn't. They offered vague explanations about adjustments and processing errors. Then more oddities followed. An unfamiliar plagiarism warning for an assignment I hadn't even submitted yet, a tutoring appointment I supposedly canceled, an accusation from a student I didn't know claiming I'd skipped a mandatory study session. At first, the errors seemed trivial, easy to brush off. College systems glitch all the time, or so I told myself. But the incidents grew in frequency and impact, each one tightening around my academic reputation like invisible knots. Whispers started spreading in hallways. A few classmates began watching me differently, not with suspicion exactly, but with hesitation, like they weren't sure what version of me they were approaching. My roommate, Talia, was the first to ask if something was wrong. "You're checking your email like you're expecting a punch," she said gently one night. I laughed it off, but she wasn't wrong. I wasn't waiting for bad news. I was waiting to recognize a pattern, a thread tying everything together. And deep down, though I refused to admit it, I feared that thread led straight back to Serena. The turning point came during the winter of my final year. I received an email supposedly from me canceling a crucial capstone review meeting I'd worked months to secure. The wording didn't sound like me. The signature wasn't mine. Yet the damage was immediate. The meeting slot was given away, my review delayed, and my graduation timeline suddenly at risk. I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering, and for the first time I allowed myself to revisit old memories with new eyes. Serena's snide remarks disguised as jokes. The way she minimized my accomplishments by calling them luck streaks. The resentment she never admitted but always carried. It all aligned with a chilling clarity I had tried to avoid. Someone wasn't waiting for me to fail, they were engineering it. The truth pressed against my ribs with undeniable weight. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't bad timing. Someone wanted my future to collapse piece by piece. Someone who knew me well enough to mimic my tone, my habits, my passwords. The day everything snapped into focus began quietly, almost peacefully, an afternoon so ordinary it felt cruel in hindsight. I had just returned from a study session when I found another email waiting for me, one that made my stomach clench. It was a confirmation for a tutoring service I had supposedly hired and paid for, except I hadn't. The receipt listed my campus account, my student ID, and even my automated signature. Someone had been inside my accounts again. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands trembled, not from fear but from realization. Whoever was doing this wasn't just tampering with paperwork. They were weaving a web around my entire academic identity, thread by thread, and they were getting bolder. That night, I couldn't study, eat, or even think straight. Instead, I drove the 2 hours back to Alden Ridge. I needed grounding. I needed answers. I found my father in the backyard, repairing a broken fence panel he'd been promising to fix for years. The sky was a muted gray, the kind that made everything else seem heavier. "Dad," I said, leaning against the old oak by the deck. "Has Serena ever said anything about me? About school?" He paused mid-hammer, the silence stretching with uncomfortable truth. Finally he sighed. "She said you always land on your feet. That everything comes easy for you." His voice held no accusation, but the words sliced through me anyway. That wasn't jealousy. That was resentment fermented over years. I swallowed the tightness in my throat. "Anything else?" He shook his head, but something in his expression, an uneasiness he tried to hide, told me he knew more than he wanted to admit. I left before I broke down in front of him. Back at the university, I made a decision I should have made months earlier. No more hoping I was wrong. No more giving Serena the benefit of the doubt. I needed proof. Real proof. So I reached out to a cybersecurity specialist named Kay Mercer. Someone Talia's cousin swore could trace digital footsteps even if the culprit wore metaphorical gloves. When Kai and I met in a small shared workspace downtown, I felt both terrified and strangely calm. He listened without interrupting as I recounted the missing scholarship funds, the fake emails, the canceled appointments, and the academic warnings piling up around me. His expression never shifted, not in judgment, not in disbelief. He simply studied me with the focus of someone assembling a puzzle. "If someone's been accessing your accounts, they've left digital residue," he finally said, tapping his fingers on his laptop. "People think they can erase their tracks, but trust me, almost no one is as invisible as they believe." For the first time in months, a flutter of hope stirred in my chest. It wasn't certainty, not yet, but it was enough to breathe again. 3 days later, Kai called me back in with a tone that made my pulse spike. "I found something," he said simply. Kai's workspace hummed with the quiet noise of old vans and low conversations. But on his screen, everything was sharp, undeniable, and terrifying. He showed me my login history, rows of timestamps, device IDs, and access points. Most were mine. But 3 weren't. 3 logins came from a location I recognized instantly. My parents' house in Alden Ridge. "That network belongs to your family?" Kai asked gently. I nodded. The breath knocked out of me. He wasn't accusing them. He didn't need to. We both knew only one person in that house knew my passwords, my security questions, my childhood answers, the kind only a sister would know. The name clawed up my throat before I could stop it. "Serena." My chest tightened so painfully I had to sit down. Kai continued his explanation with the calm of someone who dealt with digital disasters for a living. "There's more," he said, opening another window. "The missing scholarship refunds? Redirected twice. The accusations sent to faculty? Sent from a mirrored email, one character off from mine. The plagiarism complaint? Logged from an IP address that wasn't campus affiliated. Each piece slotted neatly into a pattern that now felt glaringly obvious. This wasn't random, Kai added. This was deliberate. Hearing someone else say it made the truth collapse fully into reality. Serena hadn't just tried to embarrass me. She tried to dismantle everything I had built, slowly, methodically, and with enough precision to pass as coincidence. I left Kai's workspace shaking, my phone buzzing nonstop with messages from Talia. Are you okay? Where are you? Please answer. I couldn't. Not yet. I needed space. I needed clarity. And more than anything, I needed strength. That evening, I drove straight to my parents' house again, but this time I didn't go inside. I sat in my car in the driveway, staring at the porch light flickering against the early spring sky. The house looked so ordinary, so peaceful, like the walls had never held shadows sharp enough to cut me. My father eventually stepped outside, worry etched across his face. When he opened my car door, I felt like a child again, small, shaken, frightened of things I couldn't name. What's happening? He asked softly. I didn't tell him everything. I couldn't tell him his eldest daughter had turned into someone capable of sabotaging her own sister's future. All I said was, someone's been messing with my accounts, my scholarship, my classes. I think I know who, but I need proof before I say anything. His eyes filled with confusion and fear. Is it serious? He whispered. Yes, I said. It was all I could manage. He wanted to ask more, but I couldn't bear to destroy the image he still held of Serena, not until the truth was undeniable. Because once he saw what she'd done, there would be no going back. Once I spoke the truth out loud, it would fracture something in our family forever. And I needed to be ready for that. Truly ready. When I returned to campus late that night, I pulled out every screenshot, every record, every shred of evidence Kai had verified. If Serena wanted to tear my life apart, I would hold on to whatever pieces she hadn't yet touched. By morning, one thing was clear. I wasn't waiting to be rescued anymore. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't shrinking. I was preparing. Graduation morning felt unreal, like stepping into a dream I had been trying to reach for 4 long years, only to find a storm waiting on the other side. I barely slept the night before. Instead, I laid out everything I needed in a neat, unforgiving row on my desk. The digital logs Kai uncovered, screenshots of every forged email, the list of redirected payments, and the statement my attorney helped me prepare. Yes, attorney. After collecting enough evidence, I contacted attorney Leora Mendez, someone known for handling academic and digital misconduct cases with surgical precision. When she skimmed through the documents, she asked only one question. Do you want an immediate end or a permanent one? The answer came without hesitation. Permanent. That night, I slipped the sealed envelope of evidence into the inner lining of my graduation gown. At sunrise, when the sky hung pale and still, I felt something inside me settle. Not peace, something deeper. Direction. Determination. Closure waiting at the end of the day. When I stepped into Alden Hall, the auditorium buzzed with pride, music, and the rustling of cardboard programs. But underneath it all, my heartbeat remained steady. I already knew Serena wouldn't let the moment pass quietly. I just didn't know exactly how loud she planned to be. I spotted my family in the crowd before they noticed me. My mother waved enthusiastically, her smile too bright, too hopeful. My father stood beside her, face stiff with worry he hadn't yet found the words for. And then there was Serena. She wasn't dressed like a guest, she was dressed like the event belonged to her. A white blazer sharp enough to cut glass, hair perfectly sculpted, lipstick bold and deliberate. She scanned the room with restless energy, as if searching for the perfect spotlight. When our eyes met, she smiled, not warm, not proud. A smile sharpened with intention. Something inside me whispered that the storm had arrived. I took my seat on stage with the honors group, trying to focus on the speeches. But every few minutes I caught Serena's silhouette shifting in the corner of my vision, restless, coiled, waiting. When the dean finally began calling names, my pulse synced with the rhythm of my breath. 1, 2, 3 steady. I thought maybe, just maybe Serena wouldn't do it. Maybe she would let the moment be mine. But then I heard the scrape of her chair, loud, unapologetic. The audience turned as she rose to her full height. She doesn't deserve that diploma, she shouted, pointing at me. Conversations died mid-sentence. Phones shut up. Gasps rippled across the room like a wave. I stood slowly, every movement deliberate. I didn't look at her. Not because I was afraid, because I knew exactly what was about to happen next, and she had no idea. As I walked toward the dean, each step echoed with a clarity I had never felt before. The audience parted just enough for me to pass, their expressions twisted with confusion, concern, intrigue. Some students whispered. Others stared at me as if waiting to witness a collapse. But there was no collapse inside me, only resolve. The dean met me at the podium. His eyes flicked to mine, calm and steady. We had spoken the night before. He knew. He was ready. He handed me my diploma with a quiet dignity that washed over the entire stage. I leaned in just slightly and whispered, "It's under my seat." Envelope labeled S21. He gave the smallest nod, barely a movement, but enough to shift the entire direction of the room. Security moved discreetly. A faculty coordinator approached the row where Serena still stood, breath uneven, voice trembling with rage. She didn't yet understand that the moment she stormed onto the stage with false accusations, she had placed herself under investigation. As I stepped off the platform, the energy changed. The whispers were no longer about me, they were about her. A woman in the second row lowered her phone with a frown. A professor whispered to a colleague with a shake of his head. A student muttered, "What is she doing?" The spotlight Serena carved for herself was already burning her. Security reached her aisle. They didn't grab her. They didn't raise their voices. They simply gave her a choice, step out or calm down. Serena wasn't capable of calm. "You're all blind," she shouted, desperation cracking her voice. "She's been lying for years. She cheated. She manipulated." But the crowd wasn't absorbing her words anymore. They watched her unravel, the way a string snaps when pulled too hard for too long. She tried to continue shouting, but the faculty member guiding her simply stepped aside, letting her collapse under the weight of her own chaos. When she reached the back doors of the auditorium, her voice was hoarse, her eyes wild with disbelief. "You think this is over?" She spat one last time. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. Because the truth was already moving quietly, legally, irreversibly. After the ceremony, I met the dean backstage. He held the envelope I had planted for him. "This is serious," he said gently. "So was what she did," I replied. Attorney Leora arrived minutes later, reviewed the evidence again, and nodded. "She won't escape this." The official investigation launched the next day. By the end of the week, Serena was banned from campus, flagged for digital misconduct, and facing civil action. Professors came forward with suspicious emails they had ignored earlier. The scholarship office traced the missing funds directly to her device, and Kai's digital report sealed everything. Serena's collapse at graduation, the scene she thought would destroy me, became the clearest proof of motive and malicious intent. In the quiet weeks that followed, I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. My parents struggled with the truth, especially my father, whose voice cracked when he said, "I should have seen it." But I didn't blame him. Serena was skilled at hiding in the soft spaces of family trust. Eventually, I moved to a small apartment in Ridgewater, a quiet town where mornings came with sunlight on wooden floors and evenings hummed softly through open windows. I bought a used table, adopted a stray orange cat who claimed every chair as his throne, and allowed my life to unclench one piece at a time. For the first time in years, my days weren't shaped by tension or fear. I breathed differently. I stood differently. I existed differently. I rebuilt myself on my own terms, not the one Serena tried to write for me. And if there is one truth carved into my spine now, is this: telling your story doesn't make you weak. Standing up doesn't make you cruel. Protecting your future doesn't make you selfish, it makes you free. If you've ever had to rise against someone who should have protected you, know this: you're not alone. Share your story. I read every one. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next one.